I will be giving you an update on sort of the local flavor of a lot of what Cole touched on. The Department of the Environment was created by a city charter in 1996. We grew from a department of about 3 people initially with a commission, and now we're over 100 employees doing programs in energy efficiency, green building, toxics reduction, recycling, school education, environmental justice, so I'm going to focus in on the green building policy update here. San Francisco adopted the Board of Supervisors adopted by resolution a goal for San Francisco to reduce its community-wide greenhouse gases 20% below 1990 levels by 2012, which happens to be next year. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot that's been done as a result of that policy being put in place. A couple years later, the SF Public Utilities Commission worked with the Department of the Environment and issued the Climate Action Plan for the city, which is kind of a roadmap of actions to take to help the city meet that goal. So SF's carbon footprint, no industrial or manufacturing activities for the most part, no large agriculture. It's pretty much building, energy, and transportation. So that's added more inspiration for us to really look at those 2 sectors specifically, and I've worked a lot on the building side. And the next kind of zoom in on that is looking at the building sector emissions. You can see how it kind of gets divided up between commercial and residential buildings. Leading by example is important for the city. So when we set out to start developing policies to address and minimize the environmental impacts of buildings, we had to look to ourselves. So in 1999, the city passed an ordinance requiring LEED Silver for all. In 1999, the first green building ordinance was passed, which was before LEED really actually came to market. There was a set of resource efficiency requirements for existing city facilities, having a recycling program, doing lighting retrofits, replacing older water-using fixtures in buildings, having an indoor air quality management plan, things like that. A couple years later, LEED kind of burst on the scene, and the city went through a process to update its ordinance to require LEED Silver for new city construction projects over 5,000 square feet. We currently have 44 public projects in design or construction or have completed, all exceeding or meeting the minimum requirements of LEED Silver, and many times exceeding that requirement. It's fun to be here at ARUP. ARUP's been a great partner in crime with all of the stuff that we've been doing locally over the years, including helping out in the Academy of Sciences and Treasure Island. And we're currently updating that requirement to sort of track with the private sector requirements, which I'll talk in a little bit, to require LEED Gold. When I started with the Department of the Environment, after working in architecture, construction, management, and planning for a number of years, I started here in 2004. There were 3 LEED APs within the city department, within the city staff family, and now we have over 122 LEED accredited professionals on city staff, and have really embraced the challenge, internalized it. All the departments have gone through training. They're working with consultants and delivering LEED projects, so we're very proud of that. Substantial structural upgrades or seismic upgrades to existing buildings with substantial mechanical, electrical, and plumbing would trigger green building requirements. Question?
Are the dates that you list for the permit application or
yes.
completion? Okay.
At the time of permit submittal. We also embedded some recognition of San Francisco's historic fabric in our 2008 ordinance, which are carried over, which basically say we want to recognize San Francisco's historic resources and the embodied energy of these buildings. So if you're preserving certain architectural elements, you would actually reduce the number of LEED points that would be required as a recognition of that, and then demolition of existing buildings would incur an additional environmental requirement through achieving a certain number of additional LEED points. And this is the current summary of all of the requirements under the current Chapter 13C of the San Francisco Building Code, where we've included occupancies that were previously not covered under our ordinance, which were basically business, mercantile, and residential properties. Since CalGreen applies to all of the other occupancies, we've included those. There are only the specific local measures, which we're referring to as CalGreen mandatory measures. Essentially, if you're doing a large commercial building over 25,000 square feet, there's still a lead requirement, and by doing the calling out specific lead requirements as mandatory in San Francisco, they're going to help achieve the mandatory measures in CalGreen. And I won't spend too much additional time on that, but I will point you to the DBI, Department of Building Inspections website, which has forms and an administrative bulletin, which are the regulations for the green building requirements under Chapter 13C, and template forms and things that you can fill out and include in your permit sets. Whoa, who brought their glasses? Question?
I'm just curious, what's driving the mandatory requirements versus voluntary?
More specifically, what exactly
Is
is the
there
question?
a lack of response with buildings just voluntarily making these adjustments and changes that's
Right.
causing this mandated?
Yeah, it is kind of mandate mania, and I think Cole's presentation, was really kind of giving the big picture of the policy drivers towards looking at creating mandatory requirements to increase the performance of the building stock, whether they're new buildings. And I think I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at what we're doing on the existing building front. I think it's important to note that we've done analysis that in San Francisco, new construction accounts for less than 1% of the overall building square footage on an annual basis in San Francisco. We're completely built out. So the impact of having requirements on new construction are great, but in terms of getting us to our greenhouse gas reduction targets through energy efficiency and other things, it's not really going to get us there. So what we did in San Francisco actually became something that was copied quite a bit by other jurisdictions that might have been experiencing higher levels of new development, for example, and I think the impacts probably are substantial from having these requirements. But there has been a lot of voluntary uptake, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the existing building side. But they're completely overworked, and there's so much stuff going on here that's foreign to them. We're trying to have a system to ensure that those benefits are being seen. So our verification process basically boils down to an affidavit of a design professional backed up by the professional stamp saying that you can either certify through USGBC or Green Building Certification Institute, which gives us a lot of confidence that there's going to be a rigorous review process, or option two is this affidavit of a design professional. We couldn't tell people that you need to certify through LEED, so this is the option you have if you don't want to do that. A design professional would basically sign this, back it up with a professional stamp, and say, to the best of my knowledge, I've reviewed all of the submittal stuff that would be similar to submitting it to certification through LEED, and say that this meets the San Francisco green building requirements.
So if a building if the building owner decides not to go LEED certified and saves those hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost, how much is the city or state going to charge to have that building submitted to? Is there a fee for that?
Well, I would differ on the hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost for the certification process. I don't have the exact numbers. Maybe Kirsten can talk about it a little bit more, but the soft costs of going through the certification process and working with consultants to achieve a LEED rating is certainly not something that's, it's not primarily the incremental cost of building a high-performance green building.
Right.
It's mostly going to be in probably, systems and other high-efficiency systems that you want to design into it, but you're hopefully spending enough time on the design process up front that you can minimize a lot of costs that would be going towards equipment and system costs later. But if you go option 2, you're basically hiring a private consultant to do the work, and that work would be something that would be a fee probably to the owner. And honestly, because option 2 hasn't been used in San Francisco yet, if we do see option 2s coming through, we're probably going to hire consultants to do some quality assurance on those, just to make sure that those projects are actually delivering. So, it's sort of, you have to pay somebody to do this review anyway, and we think there's a lot of benefit to the building owner by marketing, having a lead building that they can market to tenants, and that's some evidence that we've seen from building owners in San Francisco.
You said probably maybe that if it goes to this Tier 2 certification, you'd hire a consultant, or
no? It's on the building owner to hire a green building compliance professional of record to review the equivalent submittals that they would submit to get a lead rating, and then have them basically sign off.
So
on
if
it.
some PE signs
Yeah.
off on that, you're not going to send somebody to double check that.
Yeah, we will.
And then whose cost will that be? That will be city.
Oh, we would probably pay for that.
Yeah.